The spectral figure in the fog. Sarah had been looking forward to this moment for weeks. She had rented a cozy cabin in the woods to work on her new book, hoping the peaceful surroundings would inspire her creativity. As she drove up the winding road, she couldn't help but feel a sense of excitement mixed with unease. The thick fog that enveloped the area made it difficult to see, and she had to slow down to avoid running off the road. Finally, she saw the cabin up ahead, its warm lights beckoning to her through the fog. As she got out of the car and approached the door, she couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched. She turned around and looked into the darkness, but there was nothing there. "Get a grip, Sarah," she muttered to herself as she fumbled with the keys. "You're just letting your imagination run wild." Finally, she managed to unlock the door and step inside. The cabin was small but cozy, with a rustic charm that Sarah found inviting. She set her bags down and began to explore, taking in the knickknacks on the shelves and the pictures on the walls. As she was wandering through the living room, she noticed strange markings on the wall. It looked like someone had scratched symbols into the paint with a knife. Sarah felt a chill run down her spine, but she tried to brush it off as nothing. Maybe the previous renter had been an eccentric artist or something. She went into the kitchen to make herself some tea when she heard a strange noise. It was a soft whisper, like someone speaking just beyond the edge of her hearing. She froze, her heart pounding in her chest. She listened carefully, but the whisper had stopped. "Hello?" she called out tentatively. "Is anyone there?" There was no answer. Sarah shook her head and laughed nervously. "You're just jumpy because you're in a new place," she told herself. "Just relax and enjoy the solitude." As she settled into her writing, the fog outside grew thicker, wrapping the cabin in a cocoon of gray mist. Sarah felt a sense of claustrophobia creeping in, as if the fog were pressing in on her from all sides. She tried to distract herself by working on her book, but her mind kept wandering. Suddenly, she heard a knock on the door. She jumped in her seat, nearly spilling her tea. Who could be out there in the middle of nowhere? "Who is it?" she called out, trying to sound confident. There was no answer, just another knock. Okay, hold on," Sarah said, getting up and walking cautiously to the door. She peered through the peephole but couldn't see anything except the fog. "Hello?" she called out again, her voice quivering slightly. Silence. Sarah took a deep breath and opened the door, expecting to see a lost hiker or something. But there was no one there. Just the dense fog, swirling around her like a living thing. "Hello?" she called out again, feeling foolish. And that's when she saw it. A figure in the fog, just beyond the porch. It was a woman, dressed in old-fashioned clothing, her face obscured by the mist. "Who are you?" Sarah asked, taking a step forward. The figure beckoned to her, then turned and disappeared into the fog. "Wait!" Sarah called out, but there was no answer. The figure was gone. Sarah stumbled back into the cabin, her heart racing. What was happening here? Was she losing her mind? Or was there something truly strange going on in these woods? She couldn't wait to find out. The next morning, Sarah woke up to a chilly cabin and the sound of rain tapping against the windows. She rubbed her eyes and stretched, feeling the stiffness in her neck from falling asleep on the couch. As she got up to make coffee, she noticed the strange markings on the wall again. "What the hell is this?" she muttered to herself, examining the symbols more closely. They looked like some kind of ritual markings, but Sarah couldn't make any sense of them. She shrugged and decided to ignore them for the time being. As she was sipping her coffee, she heard a knock on the door again. This time, she wasn't as nervous. It was probably just the postman or something. "Coming!" she called out, hurrying to the door. But when she opened it, there was no one there. Just the rain and the mist swirling around her. "Okay, this is getting weird," Sarah said to herself, closing the door and locking it. She went back to the kitchen, trying to shake off the strange feeling in her gut. But she couldn't shake it off. She felt like she was being watched, like there was someone or something just beyond the edge of her vision. She tried to distract herself by working on her book, but she couldn't focus. She kept glancing nervously at the door, waiting for the knock to come again. Finally, she couldn't take it anymore. She grabbed her coat and went outside, determined to explore the area and get her mind off the strange occurrences in the cabin. As she walked through the misty woods, she couldn't help but feel like someone was following her. She turned around, but there was no one there, just the fog, thick and gray. She came to a clearing and there she saw it, a small graveyard hidden away in the woods. She approached it cautiously, feeling a strange sense of dread in her chest. As she walked through the rows of weathered gravestones, she noticed something odd. Many of the graves were unmarked, just simple mounds of dirt with no names or dates. What happened to these people? She wondered aloud, feeling a chill run down her spine. That's a good question, a voice behind her said. Sarah spun around, startled. A man was standing there, dressed in a hunter's outfit and holding a rifle. He was older, with gray hair and a weathered face. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to startle you, the man said, lowering his rifle. I'm Tom. I live up the road a bit. You must be the new renter. Sarah nodded, feeling a bit embarrassed. Yes, that's me. Sorry, I didn't realize anyone else lived around here. Tom chuckled. It's easy to forget, living out here in the woods. So, what brings you to our neck of the woods? I'm a writer, Sarah said, feeling a bit shy. I rented the cabin to work on my new book. A writer, huh? Tom said, nodding thoughtfully. Well, I hope the peace and quiet suits you. But I have to warn you, there's some strange things that happen around here. What kind of things? Sarah asked, feeling a tingle of excitement in her gut. Tom looked around, as if he was afraid of being overheard. They say there's a ghost that haunts these woods, a spectral figure that appears out of the mist. Sarah felt a shiver run down her spine. A ghost? Legend has it that she's the ghost of a woman who was murdered years ago, Tom said, his voice low. No one. Sarah couldn't shake the feeling of unease that Tom's story had left her with. She thanked him for the warning and made her way back to the cabin, feeling more than a little spooked. As she entered the cabin, she heard a strange noise. It sounded like someone was walking around upstairs, but she knew she was alone. She grabbed a kitchen knife and slowly climbed the stairs, her heart pounding in her chest. When she reached the top of the stairs, she saw that the door to the attic was open. She didn't remember leaving it open, but she couldn't be sure. She cautiously approached the door, the knife at the ready. She pushed the door open and peered into the darkness. It was too dark to see anything, but she could feel the presence of something in the room. She took a step forward, and the floorboard creaked under her foot. Suddenly, she heard a noise. It was a faint whisper, almost too quiet to hear. She strained her ears, trying to make out what it was saying. Get out, the voice whispered. Get out now. Sarah froze, her heart racing. Was it her imagination, or was someone really whispering in her ear? She turned around, but there was no one there. She felt a cold breeze brush against her cheek, and she realized that the attic window was open. She rushed over to it and closed it, feeling relieved when the whispering stopped. She decided to take a walk outside to clear her head. But as she stepped outside, she heard the sound of a woman's voice, singing. It was a haunting melody, and it seemed to be coming from the woods. She followed the sound, feeling drawn to it despite her fear. As she got closer, she saw a figure standing in the mist. It was a woman, dressed in white, with long hair that flowed in the wind. Sarah froze, her heart pounding in her chest. Was this the ghost that Tom had warned her about? She couldn't move, couldn't speak. She could only watch as the woman disappeared into the fog. She stumbled back to the cabin, her mind racing. What was going on? Was she losing her mind? She decided to do some research to see if there was any truth to Tom's story. She dug through the old books and papers in the cabin, looking for any mention of a ghost. That's when she found it. A newspaper clipping dated from years ago. It was a story about a woman who had been murdered in the woods, her body never found. The article mentioned that the killer had never been caught, and that some people believed that the woman's ghost still haunted the woods. Sarah felt a chill run down her spine as she read the article. Was this the same ghost that she had seen in the woods? As she was putting the article away, she heard a noise outside. It sounded like someone was walking around the cabin, circling it. She grabbed the knife again and went outside, determined to confront whoever it was. But when she got outside, there was no one there. Just the mist and the rain and the sound of her own breathing. She realized that the footsteps had stopped, and she was alone once again. She went back inside, feeling more scared than ever. Was someone playing a sick joke on her? Or was there really something supernatural going on in these woods? Sarah couldn't sleep that night. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the spectral figure in the fog, heard the strange noises in the attic, and felt the cold breeze brush against her cheek. She decided to stay up and wait for morning. As the sun started to rise, Sarah made herself a cup of coffee and sat down at the kitchen table. She decided to go for a walk in the woods, hoping to clear her head. As she walked, she noticed something strange. There was a section of the woods that seemed to be denser than the rest, as if something was hiding behind the trees. She felt drawn to it and decided to investigate. As she pushed her way through the thick foliage, she noticed something strange. There was a door hidden behind the bushes. It looked old and weathered, as if it hadn't been opened in years. Sarah tried the handle and was surprised when it turned. She pushed the door open and found herself looking at a set of stairs leading down into darkness. She hesitated for a moment, then decided to go down. The stairs were steep and narrow, and Sarah had to use her phone as a flashlight to see where she was going. As she reached the bottom of the stairs, she found herself in a small room. There was a desk, covered in papers and books, and an old leather chair. But that wasn't what caught Sarah's attention. It was the strange symbols painted on the walls. They looked like ancient runes, but she couldn't read them. They seemed to glow in the dim light, casting an eerie glow over the room. Sarah started to feel uneasy, as if she had stumbled upon something she wasn't meant to see. She quickly snapped a few pictures with her phone and made her way back up the stairs. As she stepped out of the hidden room, she noticed something strange. The mist had gotten thicker, and the air was colder. She felt like she was being watched. Suddenly, she heard a noise behind her. She turned around, but there was no one there. She heard the noise again and realized that it was coming from the hidden room. She cautiously made her way back down the stairs, the hair on the back of her neck standing up. As she entered the room, she saw that the symbols on the walls had started to glow brighter. That's when she heard the voice. It was a woman's voice, singing the same haunting melody that she had heard in the woods. Sarah felt a chill run down her spine as she realized that she wasn't alone in the room. "Who's there?" she called out, her voice trembling. There was no answer. But Sarah could feel a presence in the room, something watching her. She snapped a few more pictures, then quickly made her way back up the stairs. As she stepped out of the hidden room, she felt a gust of wind. The door slammed shut behind her, and she heard a lock click into place. She was trapped. She tried to push the door open, but it wouldn't budge. She pounded on the door, calling for help, but there was no response. She was alone, in the dark, with the ghost of the murdered woman. She sat down on the stairs, her back against the door. She felt tears start to stream down her face as she realized that she might never get out. Sarah sat in the hidden room, her back against the door. She was trapped, with no way out. She had tried everything she could think of, but the door wouldn't budge. As she sat there, she noticed something strange. The symbols on the walls had started to change. They were rearranging themselves as if they were forming a message. Sarah watched in awe as the symbols formed words. She read them out loud, her voice shaking with excitement and fear. "Find the book. The truth will be revealed." Sarah was confused. What book? And what truth? She searched the room, looking for anything that might give her a clue. And then she saw it. A dusty old book sitting on the desk. She picked up the book and wiped the dust off the cover. It was a journal with the name Mary written on the front. Sarah started to read, and as she did, everything started to make sense. Mary had been the wife of the man who had built the house. He had been a cruel and abusive husband, and Mary had suffered in silence for years. One day, she had had enough. She had grabbed a kitchen knife and had stabbed her husband to death. She had then hidden his body in the hidden room and had locked the door. But Mary had never been able to escape her guilt. She had spent the rest of her life haunted by the memory of what she had done, and now her spirit was trapped in the hidden room, unable to rest. As Sarah finished reading the journal, she heard a noise outside the door. She called out for help and was relieved when she heard a voice respond. "Sarah, are you in there?" It was the police. They had finally found her. Sarah opened the door and stepped out into the misty morning air. She handed the journal to the officer and explained everything that had happened. The officer listened patiently and then took the journal back to the station. A few hours later, he called Sarah with an update. "We did some research, and it turns out that Mary's husband was a prominent member of the community. He had a lot of enemies, and we think that someone might have killed him to get revenge." Sarah was shocked. "Do you think Mary was innocent?" she asked. "We're not sure," the officer replied, "but we're going to reopen the case and see what we can find out. It's possible that we've been wrong about this whole thing for years." Sarah hung up the phone, feeling both relieved and saddened. She had uncovered the truth about Mary and her husband, but at what cost? She had been trapped in the hidden room with a ghostly presence that she would never forget. As she looked out the window, she saw the mist clearing. The sun was starting to break through, casting a warm glow over the world. It was a new day, a fresh start. Sarah took a deep breath and decided to put the past behind her. She had uncovered the truth, and now it was up to the authorities to do their job. She was just glad to be alive and to have a second chance at life.